I guess I can if you can bring it to me here. I got exactly 2 minutes.
This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts. Alpha Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. You know, we're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world.
Check.
Hey everyone, are you ready to grow your own fresh, delicious vegetables, herbs, and flowers this season? If you're looking for the highest quality heirloom and organic seeds, I've got the perfect company for you, True Leaf Market. They've been a trusted seed company since 1974, offering 3,000 types of non-GMO varieties, everything from classic heirloom tomatoes and peppers to rare herbs, microgreens, sprouting seeds, and beautiful flowers. All those seeds are open pollinated, pure, and perfect for home gardeners or anyone wanting healthy, flavorful produce without chemicals. What I love the most is their huge selection, fast shipping guarantees, plus options for bulk if you're going big. If you're excited to start your garden this year with real, authentic heirloom and organic seeds, click the link in the description box below. Check out TrueLeafMarket.com. You won't regret it. Happy planting, and thank you for supporting the channel and this broadcast.
Can't see or hear me. I'm going to turn myself off.
Please remember to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, Think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. And thank you for all the support.
And welcome one, welcome all, wherever you are in this beautiful blue planet. Thank you for your valuable time and joining this ever important conversation about how our lives are being repriced. The repricing starts now. So just as we bring in the program tonight, the barrel of oil is going to be pegged at the bottom. $80 is as low as it's ever going to go again. Also, the 15% that's baked into your delivery cost for every single item is now going to be rising to about 20 to 25%. And all the inputs involved with that, with the new baseline 20% increase in fuel price. Also, the plastics prices are going up everywhere. So an additional 12 cents for every bottle that you purchase anything with. These are the new baseline prices here that will be with us for the rest of our lives. Just as much as COVID rose things between 90 and 200% for everything in our lives, that just hasn't gone back down. Remember those 2016, 17, 18 prices? Well, it's the same exact things happening now, just with the oil being at the new baseline, plus the new charges for all the tolls coming through the Straits of Hormuz. Like, this was the reset anyway, the economic reset. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Hope you can hear me 5x5. We're having some trouble getting on, so give me a mic check if you can hear what I'm talking about and what I am saying. Add to the stream. Why am I adding to the stream? Please help me. Ransom, check. Anybody can give me a microphone check here. Seems that we already had a problem with the stream on one of our ends here. I was just joining in. The microphone hopefully is the correct one. I'm on this handheld mic here that I'm using a mic stand on a lapel mic for 5x5. Thank you, Sassafras. Well, again, I don't know if you heard that intro, but our lives are being totally repriced, and the new baseline is $80 a barrel. That is the lowest it will ever go again as long as we live. Like, they're setting these baseline floor prices. So now you have to think about that. How does that trail off on other products, services, deliveries, flights, everything you can think of, the clothes, the plastics. So this is going to be another leg up. It's going to price out many a person where they just won't be able to afford, well, most basic things. If you do, you're going to have to restrict the lifestyle. Let's see. Dubai has joined the stream. Thank you very much. Sounds loud and clear. Great. Hey, I like this one comment I was looking through. Gerald Collins says to me, my neighbor should turn me on to you in this program. She calls him Too Fine Dubai and Handsome Ransom. Well, that is a good way to start the show. Thanks for the comment on that. So think about in your lives how you can protect against these price rises. How would you protect against it? If everything is going to go up suddenly another 20% at the baseline minimum, and that's going to be your standard cost forever now, you're just going to instantly add 20% to everything you buy. And as we know, that didn't really happen in COVID. It kept trending up and up and up and up. And when all people were going, oh, it used to be so cheap to live everywhere, it used to be so cheap. And now you go, whoa, it's expensive. Expect that again on another rise, just because, well, I think this was more planned. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Call it for what it is. But it seems like a lot of this was planned to reset the economy anyway. You know, the end of the decade goals here were to bring up universal basic income, a lot less purchasing, restoring nature by demand destruction and price rises, making things super expensive. You couldn't buy it. Thereby, nature could rest. Remember, they were talking about you're killing the forest, you're fishing out all the fish. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not doing it. You're advertising for the last 50 years to tell us to buy more and consume these products. We're doing that with the companies and the mega factories stripping the forest and the oceans, not me. Your advertising machine and your fishing fleet machine and the factory machine and the delivery mechanisms built up to increase stock valuations over 50 years did that. Don't blame me. But now that all needs to reverse back down to some sort of, we need to get the earth back in harmony again. And I wonder why now. You know, I kept talking about that for the last, say, 10 years on the channel. Why are all these things occurring now? Is it because of magnetic field disruptions? Is this Ransom joining us again? I'm glad you came back, my friend. I hope we can chat through this evening about some massive changes. Still trying to work out the lighting in the room here. Got the microphone on. So Ransom, if you can hear me, please join. The floor is yours. I see him in the background there.
Yeah, that was weird. Some kind of glitch. I couldn't see or hear you, but I saw you on the stream, so I just backed out and came back in. See if I guess that solved it.
Yeah, welcome to the machine. I look very opaque, and I look like I have a hazy over me here. I'm going to try to.
Can you hear me?
See what I can do with it.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks weird, doesn't it? It looks like I got a screen in front of me here.
There we go. I think we're all good
anyway
now.
So that is, whoa, that looked weird too, huh? I need to turn myself blue, and then I could be one of the blue men. I'll start playing the plastic drums in the background off the 5-gallon buckets from Home Depot.
Right.
So let me turn myself blue. So what are you thinking, Ransom? Are you seeing price rises already? Like out here in Taiwan, around in Asia, the naphtha thing still continues to be a thing. So we're looking at price rises already for plastics, and the next price rise will occur tomorrow. The fuel price is going to go up, and they're doing this on a weekly now. So I'm just trying to put it in everybody's brain here. Like as we move into this, I don't have any media to add on to you there unless you have something. Oh, there you go.
Oh, I got
the price rises are coming now weekly here. Weekly. So the price of the fish is being adjusted weekly based on the price of the diesel, and what the fishermen are paying to get that catch to shore is being adjusted by the week. Not monthly, not yearly, not quarterly, not half a year, 6 months. Every single week. The fuel prices are going to be readjusted tomorrow. Again, on a weekly. Now, for the last 3 weeks, they said they were going to adjust them on a weekly, but the government has absorbed a lot of the taxes, thereby offsetting a lot of the fuel price rises, which is nice. Like, we won't do that in the States. Here they have, but they kind of run up against the wall. They're kind of back. They threw out a lot of stopgap measures, which is awesome. They only have maybe 1, 2 left, and then the price are going to rise. But again, like, how could you adjust your lifestyle to adjust to rising prices by the week? Most of us get paid by the month, or if you're lucky, you get a paycheck once every 2 weeks. Try to adjust your lifestyle based on 3 price rises between your paycheck and the next time you start to buy stuff. Like normally a hyperinflationary event is that this is what occurs, is people lose that confidence that the money can buy them as much. So they run out and they buy everything the same day they get paid. And there's these giant spikes in the economy on a single day or 2 days as everybody unloads all their money. And then the other 5 days, it goes flat. And you get these, it looks like a rhythmic pump, like an EKG in the spending patterns. Now, once that winds up into the daily, then you start to get into this Weimar Germany type of thing. But we are in the beginning of a hyperinflationary event. It's not about the money is not worth as much. It is to a point, but that is the thing that erodes the confidence of people that don't want to hold their money in a bank or don't want to invest it, because the prices of return on that are not going up fast enough with the prices that are increasing by the week. Now, I am startled that things in a place where it's being revalued by the week. So again, many things are occurring here first, which are going to reverberate around the globe. It's just going to be, this is business. It's not an individual point on a map. This is a world business cycle that is unfolding. And because of constraints on plastics and naphtha and hexane and these sort of things, it's being felt around in Asia first, but you got to get that. The plastics produced here are the ones that eventually make their way to the United States for our food packaging. If you can't package the food for delivery, then what kind of bottleneck does that create? Not a lot of people are thinking and gaming this thing out. You need to roll it back to plastics. And those are going up by the week. And the delivery of your food, that's going to be greatly impacted because stores and factories can't even package the foods to take it to the shelf to get you delivered because the plastics aren't there to wrap the foods to even get it there. Yeah, thank you. Global plastic supply chains further pressured as Abu Dhabi petrochemicals plants suspended after attack. And it's going on and on and on. And this whole disruption, you say ceasefire, it's not. Israel's violated that tremendously, so disproportionately in Lebanon, that Iran says the deal's off. We're gonna, and then they started lobbing drones in. And remember, Ransom, when I said about maybe 2-3 weeks ago, when you see the east-west Yamal pipeline get blown to a point where it stops delivery of oil, this is when it really changes. And what happened the day before yesterday? The Yamal east-west pipeline got hit by a drone, and they stopped delivery out over to the Red Sea. It's already here. So if there's really a disruption in the strait again, then that east-west pipeline is not going to be the lifeline it was for 7 million barrels a day. That's going to be 0 barrels. Then we get into some major numbers. So this whole thing, again, I'm coming back to it. I feel like it's planned to reset the economy, because all I'm seeing is resetting of the economy in a planned fashion around the world. I just don't think those two are, disrelated at all. I'll shut up now.
No, I don't think they're unrelated at all. And what's really bizarre out there is that they pretend you have the administration of multiple nations, not just ours, pretending that they have the economy under control and don't worry about it. But at the same time, the Mockingbird media is weirdly putting out enough information that you can see that it's kind of not transparent. I'll say that. And this is what you were talking about right here, the price of plastics, petrochemicals. That means not just plastics, but all kinds of packaging, supplies for construction. It means medicine also, because some of these things are sent off other places to get remanufactured into new products.
Can you roll down in the article so we can read that a little bit? Can you scroll down and we'll pick some nuggets out of there? Yeah, right there.
Yeah, it's talking about their operations at the facility have been immediately suspended. No damage. But I've seen some of these buildings get hit, and they'll have minimal damage, but they'll claim catastrophic shutdown. So there's
Why
a little
is
bit
that?
of because I think the plan is to shut everything down for at least a little while. We're having a war economics plan going forward. It's a war economy, but even if you don't see continual, direct war on the news, the war is still happening. It's an economic war. There's major powerhouses trying to shore up all of their control of all of the resources worldwide, and that's South America, North America, Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, all of it. And they're taking new sides, and it's kind of.
Can you roll down to the next sentence right there? The PE right there, the polyurethane, the packaging films, the shrink wraps, heavy duty sacks, liners, fillers, caps, closures,
pipes.
Yeah, do you just the top there is food packaging. So think about the PE and HDPE, LDPE, and then the PET and that sort of thing.
And
the
then think about
PET is like drink bottles, right? Syringes, there you go.
Catheters.
We're talking about now the entire medical supply chain being disrupted because of the plastics disruption.
And that includes all those little pins that people take, like for diabetes or, those Ozempic pins. All of the manufacturing packaging is going to see. It's funny because they sold you this idea that they're going to drastically reduce the price of the pharmaceuticals. We're going to get our economy good. We're going to do mass deportation and all of these things that were in a direction of a better economy. And just like classically, like you can go back in time and see this, it's like the country will sabotage itself by starting a war and then blame the war on why the prices don't go down, but continually go up exponentially over time. And this is
so polypropylene, let me jump on that one. The polypropylene are the little things that you might get cheese in sort of a harder plastic container. And then the films and that sort of thing is what you would get, like you rightly know better than I, with wrapping different kinds of meats and hamburgers in those styrofoam plastic and those styrofoam packages that have that absorber on the bottom there. Like any of that stuff that comes out as sort of a fresh, quote unquote, in a supermarket has all that film on it. Like if that film disappears or becomes, 5, 10, 20 times more expensive per roll, then that's just another add-on cost. And, every single thing you purchase is going to go up by pennies or dimes or quarters. Every single thing you buy, I don't care where you buy it, what you buy, it just does not matter. Everything you touch in your life is going to go up in a certain price point, and that is going to be the new standard for what we pay for everything moving forward. Everything.
Right. I kind of wanted to point this out. I talk about a lot the plummeting fertility rate around the world, but if you look at the timeline there, it's talking about since 2007. What happened after 2007 was 2008, and that was the beginning of the destruction of our whole economy and everything, where they really started hammering away at industry, stealing money, embezzling money, disappearing money, and now we're at the just back to business price hikes, but that's okay because this correlates right with the infertility rates. AI has replaced workforce 20% full-time employees in the U.S. survey, and this is starting to span on more fields and kinds of jobs than you would think. And then you got we got promised to get our electricity and our energies down, but just in time we have reasons to make the energy go up. So bills in energy rich West Virginia now top their mortgages, which, I mean, think about that. So people are having a lot of mortgages. Any sector that you look at in the economy right now, it ain't doing hot. It's doing about the same as it was in 2020. Ironically, I saw a graph earlier about the price of oil going up and down in time, and we're exactly at 2020 right now. So the same prices, the same peak, and the same trough. I don't think we're going to get the trough the same way, because the way those graphs go up, they always go up, and then the trough meets the last peak. So overall, the price still goes up. This one's talking about economic growth downgraded to only 0.5% for the fourth quarter of 25. And this is funny too, is because the workers, the soon to be workers that are going to be filling up the majority of job slots in manufacturing and service, all of those industries are a generation that's having a lot of problems. They're having a lot of health problems. They're having a lot of anxiety problems. And if you think about it, you're looking at the future like, hey, well, these guys are going to be filling up the spaces and the jobs, but they can't even handle, a little bit of stress. Can you imagine these guys really worrying about something that matters? Uh, and I'm kind of joking about that, but all of them are on medications already, and they can't figure out why they're having these problems. Now, what happens when the skyrocketing price of all of these drugs that people are on, keeping them at a zero, I guess, if you want to use that term, keeping them at zero, and then they're still having problems maintaining. These are the people that are also losing they're losing their jobs in the future because it's going to be replaced. Do you want a competent AI machine that does the same task every single time, day in and day out, 24 hours a day, and keeps producing with minimal errors? Or do you want to hire a bunch of stressed out, um, you know, dope addled people that can't read in cursive, can't write an envelope, can't do their taxes, can't, they can't do all kinds of stuff. And then at the same time, that same population is reducing in fertility here.
Yeah, I got you one. So let me share a screen with you. This will put it really into perspective with everybody on this one here. There we go. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the Fed liquidity. So when this goes up, your inflation goes up, and the new numbers that I'd seen were looking somewhere around this round. Remember how I tried to convince us during COVID? It was not very high, and then they ended up at a plateaued out around 9.1%, 9.4%. This time they are predicting for it to go between 12 and 19% based on the liquidity injection, the amount of money they're going to have to put in to prevent everything from collapsing, in addition to the runaway fuel prices and all the repricing anyway. This is like two layers of inflation running together. You get all this Fed injection in there. Nobody wants to buy our debt anymore, so we have to buy it back. This is the reason they're going to switch over to the stable coin issuance and have the conversion to stable coins to create an artificial need for our U.S. treasuries. Now, this number is forecast to go well up into the 20% range, what again would bring us up into that 19% inflation. So this is one of the newest charts that come out over on Real Vision, talking about the same thing, just comparing COVID money printing with current money printing and what's going to need to be done to stop our entire stock market from collapsing some 80% or so due to the energy prices. People stop buying because there's no more product, the rises in price that everybody needs to pass on. There's a problem that countries need money, so they're selling stocks, they're selling bonds, U.S. Treasury bonds, or selling gold to get money right now to keep keep the governments going for operational costs. That's why there's such a fire sale for everything on the planet. And it's the opposite of what should be happening. Like normally when a war, people go to gold. But a lot of these countries are selling their gold because they ran out of money, and the US is not allowing them to redeem their treasury bonds to take dollars out because that will collapse our markets. So our government's telling other countries, I know you want to sell your T-bills, your 10-year notes. You're not allowed to. We can't allow you to redeem them. So this is where we get into this doom loop, or they call an economic doom loop, is we can't let people sell our treasury bonds that need it for their own needs for their money because it would collapse us just on that alone. So their backup is then to start selling their assets, whatever it is, their holdings, their gold, their mining companies, their port, contracts, whatever. They're selling all that off. That's why everything is going down currently. It's not because the economic activity is really going down. You could charge more and then make up for that and just get a higher bottom line by charging more because there's a disruption. The current thing is anybody selling everything. They got 200 countries selling anything not nailed down because they can't redeem their treasury bonds to continue their government operation costs. Every country in the world is going to need to print even more than COVID. They're just going to have to make money out of nothing, literally, and then they're going to start selling hard assets to get real money. So we're just in this loop of downward spiral. Eventually, it's going to hit the bottom, and when it does, like gold and silver are just going to go to the moon, literally on a rocket ship, anti-gravity propulsion straight up. But until that happens,
Here, well, check out this. I know you love the graph, so I'm going to give you another graph here.
I love the graph. I'm a graph lover.
All right, so this is
leave your graphs. Don't put me near your graphs.
This is oil prices here. It's maxed out as far as it goes back, and it only goes back to February 24th, 2012. And as you can see on this, since then, the average of the barrel of oil would be right about 80. And I know you were telling me that earlier, but I think the new thing is going to be right about 90. So you can see, I think from now on, 90 will be this pit right here that we had in 2016 of $31 a barrel. From now on through the future, they're going to keep it hiked to about 90, I think. I know you were saying 80, between 80 and 90. That's probably where it'll go back
bare minimum. And that's the bottom floor to never go below that. So for sure it could go above it, but 80 is the minute. Will never go below 80 ever again. Right. They're gonna price it as such and structure. How they manipulate everything anyway.
Right, I agree with that. That's what I think is 80 will be the bottom, but 90 will be the average. Right around 90. And it's actually, if you look at this, going back in time, the only time we had gas prices or oil prices that were low was between 2016 and right over here at 2020, and then boom, it skyrockets up here by 2021 up to, if people forget this, that back in all through this era up to 2016, you were already dealing with $90 to $100 a barrel, and now we're back there. So actually, this is the norm. Already going back 2 decades. People just don't realize that because of the fluctuation. And they had a little break here between 2016 and 2020, but then it just kept going up and up and up. And as you can see, it never went back down to those $30 prices. The lowest it got was $63 a barrel. And then now we're back up to around $100 a barrel. Actually, it just went up again since I looked there. That's April 2nd, 111. I think it's like 96 today, I'm not mistaken.
After all the good news, the planned fake good news,
and then you got, I love these terms: price correction.
Overdone to ESA means what? It means that it went over the price range they were anticipating or planned it for. So that price dip that went into the 90s. Maybe it was unplanned and they really meant to keep the bottom floor at 100, but it broke through that and went to 96, 95 by accident. There's a lot of things going on with this pricing. Yeah, oil prices to hover around $100 forever. Concerned about Iran ceasefire. And, they're going to let only 15 ships through, and it's going to be an extra $2 million a ship, an extra $1 per barrel of oil. For every oil barrel that transits across the planet through the Middle East, you're going to get charged $1 extra per barrel now.
And what's funny to me, too, is that a couple of years ago, we laid all this out. Now, the Strait of Hormuz was only one piece And we talked about the way that you get into the Mediterranean from the other side. So up above Cyprus, and you mark my words, the next stage of the world transformation is going to be between Cyprus and Turkey, all through that area right there. So this combat is just going to move over in the news to a new spot, but it's not going to stop. It's going to continue on. They're going to fire missiles back and forth. There's going to be operations. They're just not going to stop. It's going to be a steady incline, just like it was right after 2001.
Yeah, let me jump over to buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. Got some comments and some double espressos rolling through over here. Catherine Barlow, thank you for the double espresso. I'm still freaking out about DJT Truth Social post. I think it's an invasion of the body snatchers. MK Ultra. He's acting bonkers. I can see my job eliminated by AI, but I'm getting old, so whatever. Yeah, and the whatever is kind of a key point, because things are in such flux and changing right now. You really can't even plan like the traditional, I'm going to do this for 20 years. I'm going to invest it for 30 years. We're going to go out and that's kind of an old world, so we're more in by the year or 5-year period now. I can't, because it's hard to even think out 10 or 20 years from now on how the world will be or to structure for something. Gold and silver, though, have been good for 5,000 years plus, right? So I'm kind of gravitating towards the things that have been solid through history, through all the world wars, all the economic resets. Gold, silver, land, cattle, and food. Like those have always been good, right? Tools forever, and skills. Like that'll be solid for another 8,000 years. So I'm kind of gravitating toward that. I do feel the same thing. Like every time you see, I had this recollection yesterday because they were showing here, at least in Taiwan, they had a really good collage of COVID era like politicians saying, they put all these different politicians that we remember from the COVID era, like that one draconian girl down in New Zealand, the guy calling for lockdowns in Australia, and all these faces. And what's that idiot up there in Canada, Castro's son or whatever his name was? All those faces, they all brought back the memory. And you know what? Not a single one of them is around because they can't repeat the same playbook by having the same talking heads trying to direct you with the same orders again. Have you noticed that? So they switched the script. They got all those faces out of there. None of them remain. Even that Root guy over there, who's the NATO leader, he used to be in a Dutch parliamentary position and he got switched in. So they've switched around the roles for everybody. And they removed and replaced it with all new faces because you cannot have the same old horse faces directing you to do something the same way again on lockdowns. Nobody would accept it. So they got a whole new active characters, Is
that me freezing or you?
Thank you very much. God bless you and your family. Someone bought 3 double espressos. Thank you, BB. And let me read this last one here. I'll let you comment back up. Douglas bought us 3 double espressos. I'm trying to look through my camera to read it.
You guys see him?
Always look forward to seeing and hearing what you have to report. Cutting edge. The cutting edge is everybody out there. You can cut your own edge.
All right, let's see here. Let's go over
here.
You
can dive in and cut your own edge by looking through things as well. Did I lose my I lost my feed?
He's
Add to
loading
the
back
scene
in right now.
Yeah, you're having a little problem on that end, huh?
Anyway.
Yeah,
it actually is what he's saying. Let's see if he comes back here.
Yeah, okay.
And you're about to start hearing the same stories too. Supply chain disruptions, things like that. And he's right about one thing. You know how you notice that they changed the actors, and I call them actors on purpose because think about the people that they had there, like Don Lemon and all of these other people that were on TV lying, and then they all got fired slowly. The Stelters, the Lemmings, all of those kind of guys, and they didn't really go nowhere. They just kind of put them back so that later, they could come back on. And right now it's the right's turn. So they're destroying any kind of voices or cohesion that you would think of on the right side of things. And they're going to burn it down. And mark my words, this election, they'll have a bunch of losses for the Republicans and a bunch of wins for Democrats. And then they'll start saying they can't do anything about anything because of the Republicans, because of the Democrats. But it's the same old game that they play every couple of years. And it's obvious that war was the plan. And if you really think about it, how many years did you get between the supposed withdrawal from Afghanistan, a 20-year war, and the end of combat operations in Iraq to right now? And if you really look through the history, there was nothing. There was no stop. We never stopped. The combat never stopped. We never pulled out of Syria, even though we let all of those people in Afghanistan have $81 billion of weapons. You know, we just jumped right into another conflict shortly after that.
Yeah, I want to say one thing about Lebanon as well. I've noticed a
Wow.
very
Boy,
destructive
this
pattern of ancient
restream is a
historical
glitchy
sites.
thing because now I don't see you again, but I see you on the stream.
Yeah, and if anybody out there can hear me, please give me another 5x5. You can see our interrupted broadcast here. But I'm noticing in Lebanon, there's a destructive pattern on World Heritage sites, ancient historical archaeological sites, and absolute just going in and bulldozing it flat after, the raining from the air comes down. So again, I would ask you and challenge you, is this another destruction of history? Because whatever happens in the next stage, they continue to have to remove history over the centuries here. If we march back to World War I, an enormous amount of what was the previous 1880s architecture, interconnected, however, communications devices there were. We're told one story, but when you look back and you see wireless towers everywhere and wireless transmission capability through everywhere, and you wonder how they were using fireplaces that didn't have their, I've been in some of these castles where they still in Czech Republic, where they still, and Venice also, where they didn't remove the fireplaces entirely. But I'm telling you what, those fireplaces are only like a foot deep. And I'm like, there's no way a fireplace is a foot deep like that. So some other source was there. And I've seen a lot of those images where it had, the two metal columns next to it. I mean, if there was some sort of electrical charge between that would have had the reflective heat coming out. And, with Tesla and all these, inventors of the time back in the early days forward, it wasn't as if Edison and Tesla and Marconi and all these people who invented great things that we still use today, as if they weren't around with their brilliant minds at that time. And you wonder what was destroyed at that time and what had truly been invented, because, also at the same time, we came off the bimetallic system. And what I mean by gold and silver were used for money, like to print money, the money we understand as paper. It just didn't exist. It existed from a single point, from a bank that said, your $5 coin or your $1 gold piece, I'll give you a piece of paper from this bank that says you can come back and get it, so you don't have to carry the coin with you. But in terms of a national fiat currency, it just didn't exist. All those banks, when banks went out of business, there was the bank run, it was for an individual bank. It wasn't for what we understand as a national bank. The only way they were able to accomplish that was removing silver out of daily circulation, moving us to a single gold-only standard. And then that could have been usurped, as it was in 1913, by the Federal Reserve. But up to that point, all the way pretty much through history, except a couple experimentations with lending out gold in Europe. Other than that, China to a smaller extent as well. The physical paper was representative of the actual physical from a locale and a local point, not on a national basis, where you're not traveling halfway across the country and then giving that piece of paper and going, hey, I want my... That didn't occur until later with the national banking system in, let's say, 1860, 1870. That's why when they say when you robbed a bank, you literally took everything out of that bank and it collapsed because there was no FDIC and backup at the bank. When you stole all the gold or silver out of the bank at the time, you took everything out there, the bank's insolvent, there's no more. And there was no backup then system to fill it for the depositors at that time. That's why bank robberies were so much more detrimental then than they are now. A bank gets robbed or whatever. But back then, if a bank got robbed, I mean, literally the entire town or that whole area went around there would collapse, because all the money from those people deposited in silver and gold into the bank were gone. So everybody's wealth in that region literally disappeared. That's why people were dealt with much more severely back then, because the effects of stealing that wealth out of a bank was far higher. So I digress. So I come back in to say, what kind of technology did we really have in the European cities and what was destroyed in World War One? Subsequently, you look at a lot of these old Civil War photos, and there's many more channels that cover this, but I'm just really a fan of looking into history. You can't tell me that cannonballs turned entire cities into shreds that were just vaporized. There had to have been some other technologies there. Living in the Southeast, familiar with Civil War, but when I was growing up, we had an old Civil War highway going through our very backyard, right at the edge of our property. We get down there, metal detect, and we find little bits of belt buckles, and we feel like, we found a treasure chest of King Tut's gold or something. But you're kids, and you find little ball, some sort of shot that was left over, like little stuff worth nothing, really worthless, but still for us, archaeological treasures. Imagine being a kid and you metal and you find a little piece of the edge of a belt buckle that didn't dissolve over time. There was a lot of history down there, and a lot of these cities were great cities at the time. And the way they'll make you believe is, oh, well, Charleston or whatever, Atlanta, these were just like things with a bunch of like wooden shacks, and Sherman went through and burned down all these wooden structures. No, man, there were vast buildings with railways and vast cities, all constructed out of larger stones, not brick. And you go back and you start to look at this, and then the photos they show you is large stone construction was vaporized by a couple cannonballs. And cannonballs, if you ever seen the Civil War, the way they shot those out, yeah, they had some explosives in them, but the batteries of these things might be 20, 30, 50 deep only. And they're only going a certain trajectory because those things were heavy and they had to move them around. And even if you put 50 cannonballs into a single building, it's not going to level it to the point that you see all of these photos as far as you can see, like hundreds of city blocks just leveled. That's not cannonballs. That's something way different. So I really believe that just out of the personal area where I live in the Southeast, seeing the pre-war and the post-war pictures, knowing that cannonballs can't be that destructive, knowing how World War I and II had come in to wipe out everything of our previous history. And I do believe a lot of technologically advanced, energy production and delivery devices were not meant for the public. That was meant to be stripped away to give us this world we have now. You're telling me they had compressed energy or compressed air technology since the Roman era, like literally back, if you can go back 2,000 years, using air compressed by water, using spindles, and we didn't evolve any of that technology for almost 2,000 years. That they would have us believe since the 1860s, we went from a horse and buggy to a rocket ship to the moon in less than 200, but the last 1,800, even though we had the base technologies to spin something to then create metals, hone metals, sharpen tools, and get us up into a much higher complex industrial fashion using compressed air energy technology, that we did nothing with that for 1,800 years. But in the last 200, we suddenly went from the horse to a rocket. Insane. Or the history is completely wrong, and there's really not that much history between the Roman era and now. Something seems very, very off, but I come back to the point. Now, Lebanon is being absolutely leveled and destroyed, and all archaeological areas are just being bulldozed, literally bulldozed. I saw these southern areas south of the Litani River. They were hammered by a bunch of bombs and artillery, but then after that, they went in there and they bulldozed all these like 800-year-old trees, these vast orchards that had stood. They were like UNESCO World Heritage ancient tree sites, and they went in and bulldozed them all to the ground. In addition to what the oldest monasteries were and all the, they're going to be going after Baalbek next. Mark my words, they're going after Baalbek to destroy it. So you're telling me that they need to go in and wipe out all the agricultural areas and some of the oldest trees on our planet that need to be bulldozed as well? Like, that has nothing to do with warfare. That is fully covering history. And, I see something very different going on here, but I'll let you talk. Oh, you're back, Ransom.
Yes. Actually, I don't think it's just about that. Those areas feed people, and
yeah,
you can see Lebanon right behind me. They're kind of leaving it alone right now, but it's sporadic. They've been bombing stuff. There is going to be no ceasefire. It's just it's going to drag out. But what's really funny about all of this is I'm seeing the same headlines as we did during COVID. And a lot of people are giving Trump a hard time. And you got to remember, he's 79 years old. He's about to be 80. And I have a long memory. So I know the people that are around him now are mostly neocons. People connected to, like if you went back 10 years, people would like, oh, you're from Morgan Stanley, you can't trust those guys, and the other big brokerage firms and finance firms and stuff, and nobody wanted to trust them, but everybody has forgot about that in the last couple of years. And there's this new idea of what reality is, and right now there's a lot of fighting amongst people that supposedly got along just 5 years ago on what reality is. A lot of people are happy with what Trump's doing. And from a perspective, if you believe in certain things, he is doing a good job. If you're judging him based on what he ran off of, though, he's doing not what he ran off of. But people change their mind, and people get older, and they have new information. So we really can never know why or what's going on because we're not part of those circles. But it looks like the same old bread and circus that I've seen my entire life. It doesn't look any different. And I'm convinced that the people you're seeing on TV do not run anything. They get marching orders. They tell them, just like Bilderberg's meeting again this year, if you got to get in there and eavesdrop, you'd find out what's happening for the next 4 years, just like people have continuously. If you go back in time, go back and check, what the conspiracy theorists were saying 10 years ago and see if they're not right on.
Yeah,
I mean, today we have a global tracking system. We have, and people are pushing for these ideas it's not a big deal. It's no big deal. And I wanted to show you this stuff because this goes right into
bring us into the universal basic income on that, because that's the next step everybody's been talking about forever, is the UBI coming in. So, this is already manifesting as we speak. And you just mentioned if Trump was going to do one thing, if he was going to do and bring us into the UBI world of a resetting economy, he's doing everything correctly. He's perfectly on script. Every move is perfectly precise, chessboard precision to bring us into this new economic system and a reset. To bring us on to UBI and do all this, what they need with stablecoin issuance to bring it up and move us into a stablecoin economy. That is on par with perfection. If you're looking at it from a different lens, it's not.
Well, there's two ways you can do that. You can sell people on the idea of a universal basic income to where the government basically will take care of you from cradle to grave. And as far as I know, that never really works out. But there's another idea. It's price fixing. It's making sure that the prices equate the average income so that people never get ahead. They never have the ability to save. They never have the ability to get properties. They never have the ability to build real inheritable wealth for their children and their grandchildren. And if you could manage to do that, then for all intents and purposes, those people have a universal basic income, but it's at risk at being lost at any time. So it's not like a permanent guaranteed thing. They're going to sell you on the idea, but what happens whenever, it gets hacked and everything's digital zeros and ones? And, we've already had debacles like this on a small scale with the food stamp SNAP program. People forget about that it can just be turned off, or your government can all of a sudden decide that it has other priorities for that money that's allocated for those things. So you can't trust any system to feed and protect you. You have to do that yourself. You have to do it no matter what's going on. And you can look all across the headlines. It's the same thing.
Wait, can you go back to that one again about Mexico? Because the very same thing's happening in Ireland right now.
Right.
Yeah, this one here. I'll laugh because Noy Mahoney, I knew a guy named Bob Mahoney when I was in university. Cool cat, man. We worked together for a little bit, and that guy was the coolest. But I just had a smile looking at that Mahoney name.
Well,
but yeah,
it's the same.
The very same thing is the fuel price and everything's rising so drastically in Ireland they can't survive, so they're blockading the entire country. No road is open in Ireland right now. So what's this one? You're more familiar with the Mexican one. I'm probably more familiar with the Irish one. So walk me through this. I haven't been surfing on this news too much in the last few days.
Well, this is basically they're mad about the same things, rising cost, and not only that, they're telling people that they have to participate in different programs that the government is coming up with. So this says the Mexican countryside FNRCM included road blockades in at least 20 states to begin around 7 a.m. And for a fact that the cartels have a hand in this because food is big business. And people think of drugs and they think of human trafficking, But some of the biggest battles and fights are happening over who controls the areas that grow the food, who grows the avocados, the corn, and all of the other products that are multi-billion-dollar industries every year. And the fact, people talk a lot about, well, America has the demand for the drugs. If there was no demand for the drugs, then they wouldn't be giving it to us. Well, the same applies for food. We want fresh bananas. We want fresh avocados. We want this, that, and the other thing. And in order to have that, you have to deal with the people that control the area of the land. It's the same thing with the oil. And that's kind of, and you want to say one thing that I think Trump is smart about is trying to include the nation that we're going to war with and tell them, hey, look, if you stop it, we can share the revenue in the port. I mean, in the strait there, we can share the revenue. But they don't want to share the revenue. They want to control it. That's the problem. Is everybody always
why would I
wants
want to give you part of my revenue?
Right.
If it's my country, my resources, and you're coming in, putting all these sanctions and bombing, why the hell would I want to give you a single penny of that? Come at it from their logic, because I'm reading a lot about Al Jazeera right now. I'm trying to put this in some sort of context. I'm trying to get Middle Eastern news and their opinion pieces, and I'm reading all kind of that. But I'm also reading and getting into the what we got over here in the U.S. and Western media stuff. So I'm trying to get both sides of it to understand how people are thinking on both sides, because that's where you finally can find either common ground or a solution. Is you need to understand how the other people are thinking first. You can't just throw your thought and idea and like do it this way, because they're always going to resist. So what are they thinking on that side? So the point, that's the very point right now is, well, you just suddenly want to come here, bomb it, and then, give us half of your stuff. Like, wait a minute. Oh, that doesn't work. Like, you had taken and done so many sanctions on the country for so long, and now you bombed it, and now you want half our money because you're going to, this doesn't make sense. So the whole point for them is they don't understand how it makes sense that the U.S. can even ask for such a thing. Like, just illogically, they're thinking it's an illogical request. Now, suddenly we've been enemies for 40, 50 years, but then today you suddenly want to share revenue with us on a transit point. Like, they know they want to make it sure that it's the whole thing that I've been getting the gist of it is they want to make sure that it's US dollars that are used for the transit point fees. Like currently, Iran wants to use cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, or Chinese yuan. So the reason the U.S. is in there going, yeah, we'd love to split transit fees, we'll give you protection, all this stuff. They're like, wait a minute, protect us? You just destroyed us and tried to destroy us for 40, 50 years. What do you mean? Since the 1970s. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Now you want to protect us and help split our revenue? No. Because they want the dollar to be used in the transit fees to keep that stranglehold there of U.S. dollar supremacy. So the Iranians understand that if they can knock out the dollar supremacy along with all these other countries, death by 1,000 cuts, they can take down America economically. And by doing that, the war machine will stop and it will never come back. So they don't want to agree. They don't want to participate because they're like, we want Bitcoin for transit fees. You can't sanction it. You can't cut it off. You can't block it through SWIFT system. It's good anywhere on the planet. And we're going to give you the middle finger. So that's what's coming off the opinion pieces over out of the Middle East over there. So they're just baffled that, like, illogically, they just don't understand how the mind of the West is working. Like, all that you did to us for like half a century, and now you want to split transit fees and become partners with us. That for them, it's just like illogic, does not compute. So that's the first thing to overcome would be that, like, explain to them why suddenly your arch enemy after half a century wants to suddenly be your business partner like a day after they stop bombing you. If you could come past that first talking point in an explanation way, that would be the greatest thing since sliced bread, because that would make a lot of sense then. Then they could like process the information as to why. But until that gets explained, they're still off going, that's a trick. It doesn't make sense. That's illogical. That's insane. Why would they do that? Something, they're going to scam us. That's all they're thinking on this request is, so just put it and march forward with that. And then secondly, they want to make sure that the US dollar is not used, and they want to use Bitcoin, obviously. So where does that take us? So those two things alone are going to be a non-starter for like working with America to do this transit fee thing. Just throwing it out there. I'm just trying to get both sides of information. I like to see, because some of their things too, on the whole religious Shia faction thing, like that's all like revenge type stuff from thousands of years, which, for us, it's hard to, put that in our context too. Like there's a lot of things from ancient and religion, Varvak's multi-millennia of belief systems and actions and these sort of things and alliances and and enemies that we can't understand either. So, we got two different parts of the world that both peoples don't understand each other just based on our histories and religions and economies and war machines. It's just, there's so many things that are misunderstood about this entire thing across all of us. That's why we need these analysts and experts to actually get in there and do the talking, that understand the societies and the civilizations that they're dealing with, compared to some bonehead politicians that are allowed to get in there and just spin their 2 cents worth. I really believe analysts and national experts and experts of these regions should be in charge of the negotiations, not talking heads. Excuse me.
Bruce.
Same thing was happening at my house. That's so funny. I was just looking that my dog was going nuts over here, barking at something outside. And then I heard it here. I heard echo. That was funny. Anyway, check this out. You know how I'm always talking about how over here we need to, the younger people, the Generation Z and millennials, really need to get on the older people and become apprentices and learn what we're losing. I mean, a lot of valuable information is losing because you can blame it on one thing or another, but there's a whole swath of certain generations that know things that are just disappearing, and evaporating around us, unfortunately. But over here in Berlin, they're targeting entrepreneurs, and they want to punish people for not having apprentices, which is funny. I don't think you should, punish them, but at the same time, this is something that absolutely needs to happen, is apprenticeships with all kinds of stuff.
Well, Ransom, bringing us up to the end of the first hour here. Now, think about that. You are giving skills to the next generation that will have skills that can escape and stay outside the system. If you are an apprentice and you understand any of the trades, you will be able to stay outside of the system. You always have a tradable, barterable skill that can be used, that people will provide for you. Food, shelter, safety, actual tradables, gold, silver, or whatever it is outside the digital system. They're discouraging anybody from having a way and a means to think outside that system, even entrepreneurs. Like, that's a taught skill. There's a lot of failure in it, but there's some successes in it, but you're allowed to stay out of the system if you decide to be an entrepreneur. The 9-to-5er, why do you think we get taxed? I hate, because I get taxed, an extra 7.5% that I have to pay out of my own pocket for Social Security and Medicare every single year, because I have my own business, that I don't work for somebody else. That is a penalization of your thoughts to escape the system. Like, you're getting an escape the system penalty. Well, they're just trying to just hammer the nail down so that the thought never goes past the next generation, which is even scarier, I think, than a double taxation event, really. Anyway, Ransom, take us to the break. Please join us for the second hour right here, the civilizationcycle.com podcast. Join us on civilizationcycle.com. Put your email in there. We'll get you the show notes. I did some show notes just before the broadcast tonight. I got 10 bullet points for you. You can, start that conversation with others, refresh your memory about what we talked about. We run through a lot of information in each show. And also, you can support us through buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. In addition to checking us out with the newsletter and helping us share this information, share the links for tonight's live broadcast across social media, bring others into the fold, and allow us to expand our messaging out by sharing the links, because a lot of this is not algorithm friendly. So you're going to have to copy it and paste it into your favorite social media and go, wow, that was a pretty interesting conversation. This guy's thinking about a lot of different ideas that are going to affect us here at home. Not yet, but it's in the, you can see the wave rolling in. So please share this wide and far and help us share and spread this information. And we'll be back right after the short break. 2 minutes and 2 seconds, as Chuck Woolery would say, 2 and 2. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, are you ready to grow your own fresh, delicious vegetables, herbs, and flowers this season? If you're looking for the highest quality heirloom and organic seeds, I've got the perfect company for you, True Leaf Market. They've been a trusted seed company since 1974, offering 3,000 types of non-GMO varieties, everything from classic heirloom tomatoes and peppers to rare herbs, microgreens, sprouting seeds, and beautiful flowers. All their seeds are open pollinated, pure, and perfect for home gardeners or anyone wanting healthy, flavorful produce without chemicals. What I love the most is their huge selection, fast shipping guarantees, plus options for bulk if you're going big. If you're excited to start your garden this year with real, authentic heirloom and organic seeds, click the link in the description box below to check out trueleafmarket.com. You won't regret it. Happy planting, and thank you for supporting the channel and this broadcast. Product you love, the 72-hour emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Not only emergency food, but camping food, and you can prepare that through the week as well. 20 delicious just add water meals. Think about creamy mac and cheese, hearty chili, sweet oatmeal. 2,000 calories a day. You need the calories. You're going to need to think and move. And the mashed potatoes, easier to make than oats, and you can add your own flavors. Goes with anything. For less than a couple of takeout meals at a fast food restaurant, get real peace of mind. And a real question to ask, how long could your family eat without leaving home? My Patriot Supply, click on that link in the description box below. It helps the channel. Truth is hard to say and hard to hear. Most people choose silence. We choose to speak. Your support of our sponsor keeps the Civilization Cycle podcast on air and giving us the courage to keep digging. That link's in the description box below. This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts. Alpha Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. You know, we're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world.
Please remember to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. And thank you for all the support.
And welcome back. Got blurry there for just a second. Yeah, speaking of Alpha Vedic, I'm going to be getting on an interview with Dr. Bear Lando next week, and they got a new product that is specifically for gut health. Because what they're noticing also, and he's going to try to explain it to me the best he can with all these different like variants of contaminants that are around in our environment, it seems to be leading to a lot more digestive and gut issues for just the general populace that nobody's ever seen this sweep before of different types of like either leaky gut or non-digestion issues, people having trouble. So he's going to explain it to me. They have something new for that. Again, make a drink of it in the morning. But I'm really curious on how we can keep our bodies healthy during these changes. That's going to be one of the things is if you're going to have to eat different foods you're not used to, let's say you start nibbling into your storable food, you start eating other things that people are preparing because that's all they have is something they got from a can or whatever. If your diet's, going to be radically changing, but your body can't change with that. you're going to have to think about that as an issue also. So it's not just that you got the storable foods, about what too. We're going to have to get her out of here.
We're back. Oh man, the dogs, they never quite cooperate with you sometimes. Anyway, I thought this was an interesting article here showing how things are going as far as, if I could put it back on screen here, people are moving around, the money's moving. And these people are moving from Los Angeles. A lot of companies are leaving California, heading for Houston. And, that might not seem that weird, but Houston is the oil capital, which tells you where, people are going to be going there. And I wanted to.
It's going to be the great migration as well as it is going to be the great repricing. Both, I think. You can't tell me that they both don't go hand in hand. And what's another one of the goals there, Ransom? It's about consolidating everybody into these 15-minute cities. It's about consolidating all the world's populace in whatever nation you live in into certain regions where everybody will live, and the rest of it will be non-human go zones, like really non-human use zones where you're going to have to get out of there. So what we're going to start to see is this push of everybody into these cities, wherever it is, like you're just mentioning one area here. And where the data centers are all located around down there in Texas hugely as well. So you can't tell me that all the data centers are popping up there. They're pushing all the populace there, and that somehow there's not going to be some sort of system that intertwines humanity and all that built out infrastructure as one like package in the same time. At the end of the decade goals, they're trying to push everybody into these cities. Like, man, again, you can't tell me all those pieces of information are not connected together somehow.
Right. Well, a lot of the companies and investment might be leaving California, but I found this is weird. It always catches my eye when I see things about reintroduced animals or, animals that don't belong in a certain area, all of a sudden popping up, invasive species. And this story is about someone may have maliciously caused a huge rodent invasion in California. And if people don't remember this little guy, he caused havoc back in the day because they brought him up from South America to use for fur. And they wanted a bunch of them to make fur out of, but they eat all the food. They eat all the crops. They eat everything because basically they're just a large rat. And it looks like either some survived the eradication of Oregon and California in the past and they survived, or someone brought a new wave of them. And I keep paying attention to this because this is like as bad as insects or something that you would have, on crops, because this thing, it produces just like a rat. It basically is a 20-pound rat, and it eats everything. And now they found this pregnant one, which means there's probably a breeding population, obviously, or it wouldn't have got pregnant. It would have been just an off pet. But back in the day, this was a huge problem. They had to literally have a war against this same specific rodent in California because it was destroying crops and making it hard to eat. Imported to Oregon in 1937. And it wasn't until 1970s that they eradicated it, and now it's back. So I find it funny that, you have all of these drought problems, you have mismanagement of the land, watershed issues, you have fires, you have leaving investments. It's like a planned implosion. It's hard for me to believe that so many, events just happen in an area. I think it's all planned. I think, there's really smart people and think tanks that think up little things like this, like, not to get too woo woo, but we already know that they can control bugs behavior. So you could send weaponized bugs to an area to destroy a crop, or any of that thing is now in the realm of possibility happening. And all the average common man's going to see is some article that says, oh, the bugs are eating the crops. They don't know why, they don't know where. And the idea that man could actually control some of the forces of nature is beyond their thought process, because it just doesn't seem like they would or they could, but they do, they can, and they would.
Yeah, but you can eat those rodents, right? Those are very much of a delicacy around in South America, right? Could we not turn the tables on them literally and go out and, people love lobster and, there's limits on it because there needs to be a rebreeding population.
Yeah.
What if you could go and hunt as many as you want, and then there was restaurants that started up and they brought some South Americans up here that knew how to cook it really well and like imported a bunch of chefs, and then all right,
Oh, we did that
we'll provide
already.
the meat. We opened up this restaurant here. We got some of the best chefs out of South America to come on up and cook it. That'd be like a win-win for everybody. Just thinking outside the box.
Well, kind of. I mean, they have unlicensed, vendors in New York City, Chicago, Detroit, eating guinea pigs right out on the street. So we have already imported those chefs here.
Just move them over south, move them west. All your opportunities out west there, son.
Right. I kind of wanted to show you this.
What's this capital market assumptions thing? These are the kind of things I would get interested in. I got a chart for you after this too here.
All right. Well, that's it. This is kind of this Northern Trust Asset Management's prediction for the next 10 years. It's an outlook on it. And it covers a lot of stuff here, especially in the realms of the way the jobs and things are going to go. I wanted to scroll down here. So
yeah, what was the header on that too? That chart you just showed. What were they looking at?
This is forecast.
Oh, the annual returns.
Right.
10-year forecast versus the 10-year annualized returns. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so the forecasts are down. Look at that. Every single one of those categories is forecast to go down from this point. 100% of those, except for Europe investment grade bonds.
Right. And why is that? Rising innovation, declining demographics, which goes into that article right there where you have governments now finally catching on that, hey, maybe we shouldn't go to war with the farmers, the inventors, and the entrepreneurs because they make society completely run. And then when you look down here, nearly 40% of the jobs worldwide and a 60% in advanced economics are now exposed to AI for replacement. So you see these big chunks down here, the green and the dark green. Those are chunks that they expect to leave where people will not be working. So for the world, it's about almost at 40% right there, as you see on the first graph.
Wait, let me challenge you then to ask what the low exposure AIs would be. If those greens are the high exposure, obviously like lawyers would be the first ones hit. Like, to write any document now, it's a no-brainer to say, I'll do any lawyer that spent 30 years in practice for you. But what would you consider the blues to be? Those are going to be the trades. Those are going to be the people with hands-on. Those are going to be construction people, the plumbers, you plug in there what your trade would be. And that is, it's come back to humans can't be replicated for a lot of tasks.
Well, it's not just the type of workers. What they're talking about is low income economies. They're talking about Africa and other places that aren't really that high tech. But when you look at the advanced economies, you see almost 60% of the jobs gone. You see what I mean?
Well, see, it's a great to have an intelligent society that can read and write and solve problems and, put pieces of information together, however they do it. And, it could be right, wrong, indifferent, whatever. But that's 60% of people that can think at a different rate than those, 20 something nearly 30% of people in the low income economies. That's more than double almost than the low income economies being affected. So what all these people that went to university, have higher education, what are you going to do with all them? Because they're the ones that won't want to sit around idle anyway,
Well, all I know is, when you're in the arts or gender studies, you're not producing products, you're not inventing things, and you're not contributing in an economic way, at least. Now, I'm not saying that those things are totally useless, but this is one of the problems that they see for them as the producers of things is the global shift to self-reliance. And this includes like individuals and individual investors, individual companies, individual people doing their own thing, trying to work around the world economies, work around the tariffs, work around all of this stuff. And I'm for it. They think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. Right. So geopolitical tensions and protectionism are pushing countries to pursue economic self-reliance. This is a good thing. This is just like having political firewalls with different countries. This is the whole reason we never wanted a one world government, which it seems like we're going to get anyway. And you kind of mark my words on this. The United States might just temporarily pull out of NATO because Turkey is a NATO country. And if we're going to have problems with Turkey, which I think we will, and the reason for that is because they're the new manufacturing center for high-tech weapons, for drones, for bombs and stuff. And they're selling them all over the place. They're selling them to Europeans. They're selling them to the Middle East. Russia's buying a lot of them. So they're playing all sides, and somebody is going to get upset. It might not even be us. It might be the other side. It might be Russia that has a problem with them, and China because of what they're doing, because they're literally playing all sides to the middle. The problem is, we have this world economy here. Look at this U.S. tariff rate. This was all the way until 2025. You see how it dropped, but back in 1941, it was almost at the same point as it is now. Matter of fact, a little bit higher. And what happened in 1941?
Caveat to that, Ransom. Inflation in America was 21% at that point too. So some of the highest inflation ever experienced in America was post-World War II. In that era, from say 41 to say 48, we actually went above 20% on inflation, because they were trying to write down all the debt that they had accrued up through World War II as well. So, following some of these numbers here, you're going, oh, can you imagine a 20% annual inflation rate in America? In addition to the increased costs of everything, the cost basis on something itself, and then add the inflation on top of the increased cost,
Right.
You're gonna get it from both sides, or you're just gonna get these instant price rises, or they're gonna settle into a new level, and then you're gonna get 20% on top of that. So, ouch. I don't think a lot of people can survive this economically. I really don't.
If you looked at this pattern, if they would have stretched it back into the 30s, you would have saw the depression and the effects of the depression, and the tariffs skyrocketed, and then we had a war, right? So look at the graph and tell me what happens right after the tariffs peak, according to this graph. I'm just saying, I'm not claiming to understand all of the data that it takes to make this, but as a pattern recognition thing, I see 1941, World War II, tariffs go down, they keep going down. You start having financial problems, and look right about here where it's at the very lowest is right after the 2008 financial crisis, and then you get over here, and then boom, back. It just skyrockets in 2025. What do you think happens right after that? Well, war.
And remember, Turkey, they're coming on hard and heavy with their semiconductor production as well. They're setting up for the new high tech, between Eurasia, let's call it Eurasia, for the best term, capital. So they're going to be setting up, because Germany shot itself in the foot. So Turkey took up that lead and says, you're not going to do it? We'll do it. By the way, we can get all the helium we need from all these other places from the Middle East. Why don't we just set up here? We don't need to get it from Asia. We're going to set up our own semiconductor production here, right here. We can deliver to Asia. We can deliver to Europe. Everybody happy. Everybody knows we can go all directions. We can go by rail to everywhere else. And can you go back? That was such a great little report there. And you want to continue with that?
Yeah, right. Well, I just wanted to say one thing. I mean, before we get back into the financials, think about this one thing. So if you were back in the 40s, in order for a nation to become relevant militarily, they had to have all of the metals to do that. They had to build equipment. They had to build artillery. They had to build planes, tanks. We're not in that era anymore. What you need are chips, AI, and C4. And you know what? It's not that complicated. A little bit of wax, some petroleum jelly, boil some bleach. I don't know the recipe. I'm just saying. It's real easy to attach that to a drone. And what we're talking about is replacing $1 million equipment with a few $1,000s worth of equipment. Now that allows third world countries to now become relevant when it comes to military power. And that's exactly what Turkey jumped on.
Yeah, and then their cooperation across all of the different Caspian Sea Basin regions, and going further out west toward China, which is another trading partner of them. They've linked all that by rail through all the stands, like Kazakhstan, that Astana, that is the new financial capital of the world. Astana in Kazakhstan is the new finance capital of the planet. So they've already planning to switch the economy and move it into Central Asia anyway for the new New York of the world finance. It's already been planned to go to Astana. So if you can't tell me there's already isn't a plan to disrupt and break the rest of it and move it somewhere else and introduce an entirely new system, I mean, You can only go so far and go, well, that's conspiracy. But the rest of it's kind of fact. It has been for a better part of a decade now. Excuse me, I digress. Go ahead, Ransom.
Well, I was just looking at this thing here, and this is the government deficit percentage of gross domestic product, or kind of their debts and deficits. And again, you just look at these dates that they go up. Everybody goes
Where's
down.
the 1980s for Japan? That's a good reference point. Does it show you the 1980s on that? There you go.
We're only going back to 02 here.
Okay. Because I'd like to see what the 80s were with Japan when they were at the apex of the world for everything, for economy, production, high tech, electronics, exports. They were like the apex predator, with surpassing the United States. So I was just curious on the 80s with that.
Look at this big dip. Everybody started kind of getting rid of their debts and deficits right here. And then you hit,
because they printed so much money and they wrote it off. They inflated that away through COVID printing. They're going to do it again.
This is 12/31/20, right when COVID came out, right? And then look, all the deficits go back up. But look who's got the most up here is Japan and the European Union. And actually, the UK and the US have slightly gone down compared to those, which I have a feeling that if you expand this out, this spike is going to go up past these other levels right here. So you would have to go into the plus finally.
Oh, they're well into the well over ones anyway on that. I mean, some of these places are at 110% already, I think.
All right.
Yeah, fixed income to asset. Okay, so the fixed income means you only get this much money ever per month. So if everything runs away in price, you're not able to keep up with that. So I'm curious what this chart's about here.
Right. So
fixed income. So you put something in, Ransom and me, we put in $100 and they give us $2 a month on interest or something, right? That's all we get. We only get $2. Doesn't matter if inflation's running, we get $2. That's it. Now, and everything, our life costs double. We're still getting $2. We can't live on that. Then what happens?
Well, you do without. And I think this is a good example of universal basic income. It's the same idea, right? You only get so much money, but the prices, they're not relying on how much money you have unless they do it the other way that I said, and they just estimate how much people are actually trying to save or accumulate, and then they raise the prices on everything so that basically you have just enough to fulfill your obligations and exist.
Do you really need that cable? Do you really need your high-speed internet? I mean, we do, because we rely on this to continue to talk to people and. All right, so there's your 10-year annualized fixed income forecast return. All right, so your valuations are going negative out of Japan and Europe. Okay.
U.S. high yield.
Yeah, right there. I was looking, going, what's a blue? Because it popped out on me. Value all negative. Okay. So look at that. They're already anticipating high default on, where is that high yield default in the U.S.? Well, that is that, private credit market that's offering high yields that nobody can get their money back from, and they're defaulting left, right, and center right now. This is a very dangerous time because you got trillions of dollars locked up in this private credit market. It's way outside. Like me and Ransom can't participate. Like to even get into it, I think you need something like your minimum's 10 million on a single offering. But a lot of times they bundle those together to get a higher percentage rate, and like 10 of those people will come together, put in 100 million. They're like, okay, we want our money back out, and they're like, you're not getting it out. What's that? Blue Owl and BlackRock, Blackstone, and I forget, there's a few others. Like, no, we can't let you have your money back. Well, that's a default.
Right. And then look at the valuation here. It's all default. I mean, it's negative here. Minus 0.4.
Another thing to note on that chart, though, is look where it says average yield, where that darker green is. Mm-hmm. Okay, so is our interest rate going to run above 5.5%? I think it already is. So you're already negative, even just sitting on a fixed income yield.
Right.
You're losing money by doing that through inflation.
I think
sounds good. I'm earning 5% on my 100,000. I'm getting $5,000 a year just to do nothing, but inflation's running at 9%. So.
But that's
you're
all right.
losing 4% for doing nothing.
It's all right, because these countries are the new. We're gonna run it. You notice that they're not listing the UK along with the. If you look at this, this is the old British Empire, especially after World War II, when we added the Japanese and then later the South Koreans into the kind of empire here in Taiwan too. It's part of the empire, part of the economics, part of the friendly nations. But I think it's funny that they left those other countries out, and we're not even talking about them anymore. We're just talking about U.S., Japanese, and Australian. Why is that? Well, Australia and the United States have massive amounts of land and reserves to pull out things endlessly. They're never going to hurt for energy, not really, unless, of course, you fix the markets to act like you are. But as far as untapped resources, as far as the U.S. and Australia, there's plenty of it, endless amounts, especially Australia with the smaller population compared to how much land mass they have.
Yeah, read that first bullet point right there. We
Yes.
expect revenues of U.S. companies. Yeah, right there. Can you read that for me? It's a little small for me.
That's all right.
The first bullet point.
Right. We expect
Yeah,
revenues of the U.S. companies to increase by 3.5% a year on average over the next 10 years.
2.3% less than the 10-year average.
Yeah, than the last decade, but still healthy growth.
But it was 5.8% before. So put that in perspective. Average was 5.8, and that is going to drop to 3.5 because something's going to contract here. They're already telling you. You know, most people will never read these types of reports, and this is the kind of stuff I dive into occasionally. You know, I'll try to dive in and get a chart to put on my channel, and I'll pull like one nugget out of this, or maybe two, because to go through the whole thing over, you know, a 30-minute video or 20-minute video, you know, people are looking for more like connected dot information, but this is solid. Like that is a nugget of nuggets there, because they are absolutely telling you everything's going to contract by about 50% right now.
Right.
Stock market included. It doesn't go down that much unless the stock market contracts that much.
This is what kills me too. It's like, what happened to the days of, you know, real equity, and where the citizens of a country had enough equity to be part of the GDP. That's disappearing. It's all becoming, I don't want to say communism, but it's similar to that whenever you have the highest of the earners and the government in cahoots to own everything and run everything.
And that's really all that's left. Because if you look in today's world, and I would just say on a general basis, like when my grandparents grew up, my grandpa worked for Campbell Soup. He was a plant manager. He was the water manager for like all the whole region up in Ohio. So he would get paid in stocks a lot. He would take out part of his valuation in stock. Like at the end of the year, they give bonuses. Like, I don't want the money, give me the stock, because they kept paying dividends. And man, that thing would split every few years. And I remember at the end, after they passed, working with my dad, and we got some of that for our family. And my dad's like, see how they did that? They invested this. They knew this one company, if they held it for 50 years, it was going to keep splitting and splitting. And grandpa thought the price would go up because it was a solid company. You got to think about this company. And when you buy shares, don't look at it like you're going to buy it and resell it. Just get the ones you think are going to last for a really long time, like Coca-Cola, Campbell Soup. Go down to these blue chip equities, like way down in. They're not the industrials, but consumer goods you need to eat every day. And my grandpa was super about water. He was the plant manager for all water treatment, different water systems. And then not only that, but, you know, at the Great Lakes at that time, we're getting a little polluted. So they were really worried about water issues and contaminated water coming into the food supply. So he was all about filtration and all these things. So I learned a lot about water when I was younger. But anyway, the way they invested was they only bought one company, and that's all they bought. They didn't buy anything else, nothing. They only held one company, and it kept splitting, and then all these, and they even had the original stock certificates, you know. But still, like, who has that kind of money to invest anymore? That's the reason I'm telling you. Back in the 1950s and 60s, one person could work. They could have a house. They could have a car. They could raise a family of 3 or 4. And the mom would stay home and work. Like my grandma didn't work until all the kids were out, went to high school, finished up, and then she got into like community stuff because she had the free time. Like you just think about the work, think about the families today. Like everybody needs to work just to get by. Like I'm living in that world too. It's ridiculous. Like the stories of my parents and grandparents and knowing how they lived and grew up and had good supply for everything on one income.
Right.
That's how they were able to invest. It's difficult for the average person in the average world we live in to have any extra money left over to invest. And if it's something they're selling you on the news as a get rich quick thing, it usually disappears in like a few years. So, like the odds are stacked completely against the average regular person who's really pouring their heart out to make it better life for their families. It's just the world's stacked. There has to be a reset at some point because like the hopefulness of this generation is not there. Like nobody wants to do anything anyway because they don't see anything in the future. Like they sold us the dream of you work hard, you work 9 to 5, you get your weekends off, you save your money, you retire with $1 million, you can go on holiday and drink margaritas on the beach for the rest of your life after 65. Get to work. Nobody's going to believe that in it. No, nobody's believing that at all today. So you can't even sell that, hey, invest money into the markets thing. That's why all these kids are going into crypto. They don't believe in the old system.
Right.
You can't sell the dream. And with a dream, just selling of the dream to continue to go to work and be productive doesn't work anymore. So I'm saying the entire system is run to an end here.
Right. It's either that or they're doing the stuff like the gambling, like poly markets and stuff, which is basically gambling. And they're hoping for their futures on that, which is basically they spread the casino mentality out to the whole economic sphere. But this is kind of the key linchpin of the point of this whole thing that I was going to get to, because I didn't represent it that good. But the contributing factors to our forecast: natural resources. The global shift to self-reliance may stoke demand for commodities to support AI, advanced defense equipment, and robotics. Global infrastructure, increasing global power demand likely will drive growth, particularly for the global utility sector, which is going to be putting that sector is going to be making AI, advanced defense equipment, and robotics. And then down at the bottom, global real estate, lower interest rates could stifle declines in commercial real estate deals, and AI growth may boost demand for real estate to support the data centers. If I wasn't wanting to get too crazy and too cuckoo about the future, I might say that an AI force has taken over the governments of the planet, and now they're planning on covering the entire planet with it. And not just the planet, the moon, low Earth orbit, and eventually into space.
And solar panels and windmills as well. Because I've seen some, just amazing images lately coming out of places where like square miles and miles and literally square dozens of miles are all covered in just one contiguous solar panel farm.
Yeah.
And then I start to think back to the Borg and some of these, Star Trek episodes where their entire planet was just completely covered with tech on the outside. It was a tech planet. Well, and again, did you notice something in there? There was nothing for humanity. There was nothing about, and we're going to do this to increase food production and double the output by reducing 50% the cost, thereby cutting humanity's food prices by 50%. None of that was in there. That was all just make more power. Oh, wait, we're going to put more CO2 in the atmosphere. I thought for 40 years we were banged on the head like a harp seal not to, pollute or put any CO2 in the air. And now they're saying, oh, well, that was kind of the old world. We need to pollute the crap out of this place because we need to produce so much power to power the data centers, that all that stuff about burning coal and gas, that was old school. You're not an AI thinker these days, man. You're stuck in that whole global warming time. Get out of it. Like they're trying to switch us again in the narrative of how you're even supposed to think about the world. You weren't even allowed to fart the last 40 years without warming the planet. And now they want to build out everything that's so heavy until they actually want to ramp up our production burning fossil fuels by another 50-60% globally to power the data centers. Like,
right.
What insanity is this? We're being fed. Really, we're being force fed and brainwashed on this.
Well, you brought that up. Think about some of the more famous sci-fis. You got the Transformers for the younger generation. They come from Cybertron. It's a planet completely mechanized, ran by AI. It's basically a giant robot. And then you got Star Wars that everybody loves. Their main central capital, the Roman Empire in the series, is called Coruscant, and it too is a complete city planet with nothing but mechanical devices, no greenery, nothing. It's just people living off of robots and AI, and half of the people are part robot or AI. And we're gonna put it out there in space, man.
I was watching a few commentators explaining why there were no stars in most of the images here from the Artemis imagery, and even the ones on the backside of the moon, that they could have been out of the photon flow, so they could have gotten sort of a nighttime environment. Still, there were very few stars. And they're like, well, we turned the thing this way, and then we shot it at 10 seconds, and wow, look at all the stars.
I can tell none of those people have ever owned a nice camera. Because you can't, if you have an object that's too bright, you cannot see any of that dim stuff. You would have to complete, like, if you were watching the stream, they kept blotting out the windows so they could take pictures. And the reason for that is because both the moon and the earth are so bright that it blocks out any chance of you picking up some of that stuff. You can see it with the naked eye, just like when you go outside and look up. But go outside and try to look up at the stars under a street lamp. You're not going to see any because it's too bright. And I've photographed space a lot. Like I have some really high def video of the moon, Jupiter, Saturn. It's really hard to get them. And one planet you cannot film is Venus because it's too bright. You can't get it to focus in. It'll always look like a moving orb. You can't film Mars. It's too dim unless you have some really good equipment. I have a Nikon P1000 with basically a super zoom, but anytime I take a photograph that's going to show the moon in detail, you're not going to see any stars. Now, if you want to see the whole sky, you'll see a bunch of stars, but the moon will just look like a blot of light and there will be no detail in it. I mean, it's pretty easy to explain that if that's what they're doing. Now, what they can't explain is why none of the pictures are coming from the camera and all of them go to Adobe Photoshop first. That's where the conspiracy theorists are saying, why do you got to put it in through and render it and mess with it and stuff? Just let us see the bare raw pictures if you took them. Which if you looked at the picture of the Milky Way, you can get that from Earth. You can get a picture that's similar to that to Earth if you do the right photography. You have the aperture open for a long time. There's different settings on the contrast. It's basically people don't understand things. I'll put it politely.
Yeah, because I saw they were showing the camera settings on some different imagery, and they were showing one at 1/10,000th of a second at 400 on the aperture, and then they had another one at it was a 10-second exposure at 12,500 on the aperture. Yeah, they were trying to explain it away, like, well, just what you're doing. The aperture needs to stay open longer. You get any more light in there. You got to widen it out. But I had never seen a 12,500 setting in my life. Like I learned to take photography and do photography way back in the day when you had to actually on the top of the camera click those choices yourself. 200, 400, 100. You have the right kind of film that matches with that, and then you had to do the focus and everything yourself. So for them to explain 12,500 on a 10-second exposure, and I'm like, shit, I didn't even know you could get that high, that much wideness on a light. So
what's funny is I have some really good pictures of the moon in detail with the stars.
Yeah, of course you can.
But it was an eclipse, so the moon was so dim that it was really easy to get that kind of photography.
Yeah, and there was one guy, I forget, he was trying to find the Artemis, and he's got a really nice backyard telescope. People hire him out from actual agencies to do some of their sweeping of the sky. And he thinks he found it, but maybe he didn't. He thinks it was it. But again, if it was that easy to find and they showed you they were up there, and he was trying to prove or disprove that they were there, but he is still in the gray zone of he was unable to find it even with their coordinates on his telescope.
Well, I follow a lot of amateur astronomers, and if I could talk right, amateur astronomers with some pretty good equipment. There's a lot of good ones in Japan, and there was lots of people tracking Artemis or the Orion, excuse me, flying through space. I mean, so they sent something went around the moon and came back. Now, whether you want to believe there's people on it, I don't know. The question is will they get home safe? Because from what I understand, this is a big gamble. They're going to be coming in real hot, like, 12 times, or what was it? I think it was 12% faster than a speeding bullet or something like that. And they're going to have to slow down in a very small amount of atmosphere. And they've already had problems with the heat shielding on it. So, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. Of course, I hope not. But it would change the direction of history and everything going on and everybody's attention if this thing crashes on the way back.
Because in the 1960s, they wired it out in the very first attempt. They had no problems at all. And that was such an amazing feat of engineering. And they just got it perfect in the first time. And then we can't replicate that now. That just seems a little fishy for me. Just saying, like a lot of stuff. I was really, if anybody out there wants to talk about the Van Allen radiation belts too, like this time they say they traverse through, but almost everything in a textbook fashion says we cannot penetrate the Van Allen radiation belt without at least 12 feet thick of lead shielding around us to prevent that. So I know the Artemis doesn't have that. They're not wearing lead suits. It's just like, trying to go through multiple radiation belts leaving out of our planet also, puts me into, disrupted electronics. I know we got some satellites out there, but they hardened those incredible, and there were no people on them. So if you're looking at the analemma, like that 50% waypoint that they tagged some satellites hanging between the sun and the Earth there. There's some up there that are in geostationary, or they just stay in that same orbit, whatever it is. Like, how do you stereo ahead's one of those, stereo behind's another one. But for them to get up there and come back to the radiation belt as a living organism really, puts me into either everything we've ever known is wrong about radiation, like literally everything you've ever learned about radiation, from the thermonuclear blast to everything we've ever known about space and existing in photons and electrons and everything that comes off of energetic particles that comes down into those radiative layers. Everything we've ever learned in history about science to this point would be disproven if they're able to get through that radiation belt and come back alive with such minimal shielding. One of two things will happen. That will have every history book, or I should say every science book, and everything we know about radiology and radiation will have to be thrown in the dustbin, because that will all have to be disproven as incorrect if humans can make it back up and through with such minimal shielding that we know nothing. We really know nothing. Or they faked it because we can't get through that series of radiation belts. And everything we know about radiation is still true, and it holds true. And we have these problems with the human physiology in high radiation environments. So there can be only an A or B on this. There's no C choice.
I think there is.
So I don't know how, like you rightly said, I don't know how the world can remain the same after they come back. Something drastically has to change on the very structural, fundamental basis foundation of science.
Well, I think there is a C. I don't know.
There is a C. Oh, I knew you'd find it, man. Bring it out.
Well, I've been paying attention to this stuff since I was probably 5 years old. The truth is we can never know anything, like I've said many times, about anything unless you're there participating there in person. You'll just never know. You have to depend on people's word or evidence that they gathered. Now, if you've been paying attention to the basic STS flights, that's the shuttle program. The astronauts that have gone up and come back have had severe DNA damage. So it's not like they went up and came back unscathed. All kinds of things happened to them. They've had DNA and genetic expression damage and changes. They've had elongated telomeres. They've had, immune system activation, bone problems, cardiovascular problems. It's not that they're unscathed or anything. They do come back with severe health problems. And not only that, there's one, if you believe it, like I said, if you believe their information. Of course, I'm not there doing the studies with them. I'm not checking the blood or nothing, but there is a set of twins where one stayed on the ground and one has been in space, and their DNA is now different. They are no longer identical twins. One of them has damaged DNA, damaged telomeres, and all kinds of different problems. So the question is did they solve that? I don't know, because they didn't bring it up. It hasn't been brought up with this mission that I know of. Now, somebody else might have been paying attention to that aspect of this. But if you think your government wouldn't send a pilot or an airman or a grunt or, whatever, branch of the military and do things to them and know that they might get hurt and still do it, then obviously you haven't been paying attention to U.S. history. They would. They'd totally do it. They don't care. And besides that, maybe the people took the risk. If they decide to get microwaved, then, that's their choice. But we'll see what they say about that when they get back. Now, a lot of bizarre stuff was said by this particular crew. Like, I hope we don't have to make stuff up. The other guy said this will be the first time that we've put humans around the moon and in low Earth orbit. So I don't know why he said that, but he did. And there's so many anomalies. I think they purposely convolute stuff for you. I really do. I think there was a secret space program. I don't think they showed it to us. I don't think that they would show top of the line tech supposedly in those eras when we're in a Cold War with someone else that's also doing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm still down with the electrogravitic, like I was talking about with hidden technology, or at least the destruction of possible technologies that would have taken us away from this, copper line, copper wired world we're in. That if we could have continued with that wireless transmission of power, that source and generation and transmission, that goes right along with it. Well, that goes into the electrogravitics, and I would play ball with you on that and say that anything's possible at that point because there's no weight involved with anything at that point. So you could have 500 feet thick of lead, and it wouldn't matter because it's weightless, and it doesn't really. The only time it would retain its weight is when it comes back and you land it on planet Earth and turn off that power source, and then you actually get weight back to it. So this space program, if there's other elements to it, and this high tech you're talking about, electrogravitics, shit, that's been around since the late 1950s, early 60s. Dr. Brown is one of the big ones there, and there's several books on that are publicly available about their experiments being tethered to poles and how they got these things to move and how they bank, and alien reproduction craft with, I forget the artist's name, he aerospace magazine artist, and he had done some really incredible drawings about how they have these electrified plates beneath and how they power each one of those, and they make the ship bank and that sort of thing. There's other ways to get up there than to shoot. I disagree with this rocket propulsion thing. That's the old stuff they want you to see. The newer tech that's out there, we can go anywhere at any time. It doesn't matter. We can break through. But they're trying to sell us that we can still go up there with some fire beneath us is just kind of ridiculous at this point.
How do you think all them satellites get up there then?
Well, they're low Earth orbit. They're not way out at the moon.
Well, I know, but how did they get up there?
Well, fire. Maybe. Do we even know? I mean, they could show you something.
Well, according to our government, we have now been to the moon 10 times, and 6 of those times they walked on the moon. They got out. They left a buggy. They're taking pictures of those things. We have a orbiting satellite. If you believe in satellites, we have an orbiting satellite around the moon, and periodically it takes pictures of what appears to be a rover and the other science experiments and stuff left behind. Now, there's fake images. We live in the era of fake images, so you can make those images. I'm not arguing that, but I'm just saying you're talking about hundreds of thousands of employees, engineers, and other things all in cahoots. So you just to fake you out. I don't believe that. It's just too much.
Well, I'm just talking about humans breaching that outer layer of radiation to get out. Satellites are well known to go out. Like I said, they harden them, turn them off, get them through, and then they activate them once they're outside. And they shield those things off incredibly anyway for all types of EMPs and radiation events. I mean, those things are destructive. They try to break those things as much as they can. So I don't dispute that we could use fire under something to send a satellite up. Talking about an actual space program to send humans to the moon through radiation belts that are unsurvivable at the moment.
Well, do you think
bring them back twice? Getting through once would be a miracle, but to come back through that same radiation belt twice is a little bit far-fetched,
Well,
purely electronics, that's survivable. It is. I mean, there's all kinds of satellites up there that are doing things, bringing us back. Lunar imaging, we got solar imaging. There's low Earth orbit, middle Earth orbit, higher Earth orbits. That's all great and fine and dandy, but it's all electronic. I'm talking about physiological beings going through that. Damn, hardly any of those things survived that they sent up in the '60s with primates and what other salamanders and things they sent up there. Snakes and what else did they put? They put a tremendous amount of different type of, life from Earth on the surface. Up the ants, they put ants up there to see how they survive.
Well, think about this for a second. Electronics are more susceptible to radiation than biological entities are. And let me ask you this question. Do you think that they might send a handful of astronauts through damaging radiation if they would give 8 billion people an experimental medical thing? Do you think that the human health is really on the top of their priorities for things? I don't. So I know that they would do that. They strapped a guy to a high-speed test track out here and ran him down, and the guy had all kinds of, issues and didn't live that long afterwards. They strapped him literally to a rocket and sent him at Mach speed down a railroad track at the time. And he suffered all kinds of stuff, broken ribs, hemorrhages, and he volunteered for it. He did it. He didn't care.
Isn't that, yeah, wasn't he pushing like 700 miles something per hour in that chair on top of the rocket?
I'm just saying, I don't think that, with the history and the track record of the U.S. government, military, that they're really that concerned about their employees when it comes to doing some kind of task that they want done. Now, like
I'll
I said
agree with you,
before,
Ransom, but I'm saying they can't
I'm
even
not
get
on the
through that
capsule,
radiation
so I don't
belt
know.
alive. They can't even get through it alive on the first.
Well, what's
those
the
people that
rads
are
on
up
it?
there that they put them through, they wouldn't even still be alive as they transited the moon. That's how intense that radiation belt is. They wouldn't even be alive transiting through. By the time they got to the other side of it, they would be dead.
Well, I was going to look up the like how many rads are they getting if they go through that?
Look through the Van Allen radiation belts to see what the rad count is up there. And then you got to go through the F layers also, and you're transiting out from that zone. When you start to get up into those F layers, become electric as well. So then your physiology is affected. Forget the radiation. You're going through an electric belt upwards before you get into the radiation. And you get that transition zone where they're like looping in on themselves. Okay. You get magnetic field anomalies on your brain happening through that. So you're getting a layer cake of things disrupting your body functions the whole way through. Like, I just don't think they would be alive after they got outside of that radiation belt for the first time. So them coming back in, they're already dead anyway. So if they burned up that capsule, they would not, it wouldn't make any difference because they already proved that they probably couldn't make it through.
Well, according to the science, if you went through the Van Allen radiation belt exposed with no protection, you get about 26,000 rads per hour, which is fatal. However, with standard aluminum shielding, you only get about 13 rads per hour. And that's not that big a deal. You're getting that already. You're getting that outside in the sun.
I stand corrected. 13 it is. There's your magic 13 number again.
That's if it's the truth. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not in the capsule. I don't know for sure. But that's one
26,000 to 13 with a piece of aluminum foil that you could wrap your dish with and put it in the oven. Great.
No, we're talking about inch or more thick aluminum alloys. We're not talking about a thin sheet. We're talking about thick metal. So I'm just saying it's possible.
I want the cross section of that son of a bitch capsule.
Let's see here. It says the Apollo missions, which passed through quickly, averaged about 11.4 to 13 rads total during their transit, making it not very lethal.
Not very lethal. Let me check the chat and see if anybody's thrown us some goodies in here for this. If Earth didn't have a magnetosphere, how many rads would we get? Okay, that's a good question.
About 26,000.
At least, yeah.
Unless, a solar flare or something's bombarding you with no atmosphere, you'd just be dead.
Oh, Madam Castero says, David's been drinking tonight. No, I haven't. It's only 11:53 in the morning here, and I've been chugging on some green tea and coffee. No, nothing wine, nothing. It's still in the middle of the day here. I don't drink in the middle of the day. Never have. Never suits me. Yeah, right. I can't function like that. Yeah, nighttime after I'm done, maybe, but in the middle of the day, no, that's a non-starter for me right there. Where did this lie about the Van Allen radiation belts come from? Which lie? Are you telling me or Ransom? I wasn't.
I don't know. What do you mean? Lie about how much radiation? Lie about we could go through it, or lie that it would kill you? I mean, what
I know,
it all depends on what you believe.
Yeah, again, it's not very precise in what that says. I'd say we haven't landed on the moon. I don't believe anything NASA spews. Dr. James Van Allen, discoverer, said humans would die after a week in the most intense part of the belts.
Well, they're not in there for weeks. They're passing through it.
Yeah, they pass through the least intense part rapidly.
In under an hour.
Space shuttle said, yeah, this is the same thing I heard too from some of the space shuttle. When they get higher up, 400 plus miles, that they start to get like all these white stars in front of them. Space shuttle astronauts said they had cosmic rays bouncing off their retinas at 400 miles up. And I had heard something similar to that, where, just before you pass out, you might see that star. So that's the same exact thing then. And
Well,
plus there was a solar storm going on when they launched anyway. So that would have been a heightened amount of energy coming in. So even at the baseline zero, you had they had an X1 flare that came off that was Earth glancing. So still, they would have picked up part of that.
Well, think
and
about
Earth's
this.
magnetic field would have wrapped in and amplified electrically as well.
The Russians weren't taking as much precautions in their early space program. And a lot of their astronauts saw lights, they saw angels, they heard music, all kinds of stuff was going on up there. Unexplainable,
Is that what it says?
or is it no, I just know this, from paying attention to stuff. So is that radiation literally like hot particles going through them where they can see it? Because a lot of astronauts have experienced things like that.
Yeah, so really, again, it's an unknown, and we can sit here conjecture, and I'll just say, I can't believe that they can get through it unscathed. And then other people say, well, it's only this meat. Okay, so 15 feet of lead for the gamma particles, for the gamma radiation.
They're not using lead, they're losing aluminum alloy.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm just making the comment. 15 foot thick of lead is what they would need for particle protection from gamma radiation. That's a comment here.
No, I know. I was reading it. I'm talking to them. They're not using the lead. They're using aluminum.
Yeah, what if they dose with LSD before they launch? Would that counteract the effects of the cosmic rays bouncing?
That's messed up. Are you telling me there's like 4 astronauts, that were drugged and they've actually been under the ocean somewhere with some digital screens showing them, so they really believe, and then they won't be like Buzz Aldrin telling kindergartners that it never happened and he didn't go.
Yeah,
See,
back on
weird stuff.
No, back on buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle, Silver Creek. Thank you for the double espresso. Cheeto Jesus has been good for silver and gold. Yep. I'll have to look that up. I don't know Cheeto Jesus. Any thoughts on that?
No.
Keep up the great work. A place for thinkers is here. Someone, thank you so much for the buy me a coffee. I want to see who Cheeto Jesus is. God, I know there was one Hotep Jesus who I'm familiar with, but I don't know what Cheeto Jesus. Cheeto Jesus on YouTube. All right, we got it right here.
So the regulated
Cheeto Jesus is the Trump nickname. I gotcha. Okay.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, it says regulated.
List of nicknames for Donald Trump. Cheeto Jesus. It's one of his nicknames. I didn't
call
even
him,
know that.
Nah, I just call him Grandpa Warp Speed.
Grandpa Warp Speed?
Yep. Everybody forgot about that.
They wanted you to.
You can like him, you can not like him, but the guy is a pharmaceutical salesman. And now we're protecting Monsanto. I mean, it's like what happened to people? They didn't like all this stuff, and then they got involved in liking somebody, and then if that person starts doing things that they didn't agree with before, they just can't admit it to themselves. They can't say, you know what? You're not doing what you said you were going to do. You lied. They all do it every single time. Name me a president that's ever been in office that didn't lie about something or change his mind right after they got in and start doing what they said they weren't going to do. Read my lips. No more new taxes. How many new taxes?
I know whatever president you vote for, bombs rain down and inflation continues upward. Those are the only two things, death and taxes, bombs rain down, inflation up. That's for every president that's ever been. At least in the modern era.
So here's the math for you guys about the rads. So supposedly it's okay to have 0.1 rads per year, safe standard public annual limit. About 5 rads a year is an occupational hazard for people that fly in the airlines and other things like that. And 100 rads threshold will give you acute radiation syndrome. So, imagine 26,000 rads in an hour versus 13 that they're getting in there in a few hours. So obviously there is something to why wouldn't they get sick? And the answer is they kind of do.
Capricorn 1 is Artemis 2. Thank you so much for that comment. We'll see if they burn up in the atmosphere coming down.
I don't know.
Dead man don't talk. Oh, I forgot there's one woman on there.
if you're mad about the camera views, talk to people like Greg Allison. He actually designed the cameras on a couple of the missions. So like, imagine how frustrated he gets when people are saying that's fake, that camera thing's fake, and he's like, I designed that camera and put it on there.
I want to get his. We need to pick his brain about radiation thing. Like,
He'll have the answers. Better
he will.
do,
No,
right?
he does. He will. That's the whole thing about talking with a real rocket scientist. When you ask him questions about rocketry and telemetry and reorbital entry velocity and thing, he understands all that. That's the craziest thing. Like, he'll give you answers for that.
Right.
True. Yeah.
And without having to Google it real fast and see, he just go.
Yeah, he can do it by the top of his head, because that's the way people used to operate back in the day. There was no Google and there was no AI. You had to actually remember that, and that's why they got paid high dollar, because they had to memorize all the formulas and output them correctly using their brain as their computer, and that's why they got paid more than other people.
Right.
Those days are over, Greg. Sorry, boo. We're gonna outsource you to AI, because I can get your telemetry algorithm off the AI now.
All right.
Sheesh. Anyway, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a great couple of hours. Last hour, a little woo-woo, or last half hour talking about, what this Artemis mission is. We'll see how it all pans out. But one thing for sure, this new inflation bottom floor that they're, setting in for us now is a real thing. We're all going to have to rethink on how this is going to move forward, because at very minimum, everything in your life is going to go up another 20% just on the baseline cost forever from now. So, and whatever you have, is home insurance, auto insurance, fuel prices, food prices, whatever, it's all going to be 20% higher increase. And that's just going to be the baseline for your zero operation cost. Your baseline zero is going to be 20% up from here. And then, as you know, with all the money printing and all these other things they're going to try to do to stop the crashing of a lot of markets, the inflation's run on top of that hot, well above 18%, at least a lot of these things. So can we get another 40% out of, can we squeeze 40% out of a stone? I don't know, but they're going to try to. Again, they're going to milk every single cent out of every single human on this planet until this transition is complete. So please prepare for that. I thank you so much. BuyMeACoffee.com/civilization cycles. Sign up for the newsletter. You just saw the QR code right there on the screen. We'll send you the 10 bullet points of tonight's conversation so you can remember those. Start conversations with others, and then do more research for yourself so you can stay attuned in all these changes. So until next week, thanks so much. And please share this link with friends, family, and let's try to outdo and outrun the algorithm. It's going to take you to copy it and paste it out into other venues so this information can be seen widely. So I thank you for your participation in that, helping us bring this out to more people that are trying to create more solutions. The more solutions we're going to find. So until next week, bye for now.